You're watching HuffPost Live. I'm Alicia Menendez. Israel believes a nuclear-capable Iran should be America's, quote, red line. But the White House draws the line at a nuclear-armed Iran. Would the first option kill any chances of diplomacy in the region? Joining us to discuss, my fellow HuffPost Live host, Ahmed Shihab Eldin, who I'm so happy to see always, Dovid Efune, editor of the Al Jaminer newspaper, Greg Thielmann, a senior fellow at the Arms Control Association and a former State Department intelligence official, Jamal Abdi, policy director at the National Iranian-American Council, Joel Rubin, director of policy and government affairs at the Plowshares Fund, and Mayer Javedanfar, a Middle East analyst and the editor of the Iran-Israel Observer. Joel, just so that we are all operating with the same language, can you give us sort of an understanding of what the distinction is between nuclear-capable and nuclear-armed?
Nuclear arms Iran, it would be a country like Iran that would have a weapon in its arsenal that it could deploy and use. A nuclear capable Iran would be, according to the Director of National Intelligence of the United States, Dennis Blair, in testimony several years ago, a capable Iran would be one that could have enough enriched uranium for a weapon, could then test and ensure that that weapon was capable of being deployed, and then actually have the wherewithal and the capacity through a delivery system to deploy it. So a capability is very broad, whereas the armed at the end of the day is very clear.
And I think that actually reduces the chance of military conflict, because if they know there's a point, a stage in the enrichment or other nuclear activities that they cannot cross because they'll face consequences, I think they'll actually not cross it. And that's been proved time and again.
I think that it's just another way for Netanyahu to pressure Obama and to use language that I think is irresponsible. Because, you know, I will kind of divert and pivot. I'm not going to talk about everything all at once. But the truth is, I think, and I could be wrong, but I would assume and hope some might agree with me, that the most likely way to go to war with Iran would be actually another naval incident in the Persian Gulf. While words don't matter, and talking about the red line and trying to force Obama, to adopt that position, which would mean that set the red line as, a nuclear capable rather than armed Iran, as you were discussing, I think is really irresponsible.
The previous speaker is showing total disregard for the key issue here, and that is that you have 6 million Israelis that are living under the threat of annihilation. That is the number one concern. How do you stop that? It's simply as follows. You have an Iranian dictator who is promising to annihilate Israel, calling for Israel's annihilation, and building the weapons in which it would be able to do that. Now, simply, Netanyahu's call for a red line is very straightforward. He wants to do everything that you're suggesting. He wants to do the diplomatic sanctions. He wants to isolate Iran. He wants to do everything. All he's asking is that the international community states clearly, when do you stop? And when do you move to the next stage? Because that process of diplomacy cannot be indefinite when you have the lives of 6 million citizens that are at risk.
The U.S. intelligence community has made clear that it believes Iran has all of the human resources, it has all of the infrastructure it needs ultimately to manufacture nuclear weapons. What it has not yet decided to do is to actually arm itself with nuclear weapons. So the nuclear capability argument is really rather odd. In one respect, Iran today is nuclear capable. It's nuclear capable in the same way that Japan is nuclear capable, or some other countries that have not chosen to build nuclear weapons are nuclear capable. So trying to find out what exactly the milestones of nuclear capability are is very hard. Does it mean 225 kilograms of 20% enriched uranium? Does it mean all of the centrifuges at Fordow are up and running?
There are red lines that we don't really need to set them. Currently, we have sites such as Fordow, such as Natanz. They are under inspection of the IAEA. If Iran wants to make a weapon, they will have to kick the inspectors out. They would have to physically remove them from those sites because they would need to use that enriched uranium at those sites to make a bomb if and when they decide to do that. That's going to be glaringly obvious. We don't need to set a red line for that and to get into a whole fight with the United States government, and I'm speaking as an Israeli here, over this. This is not something that is really worth getting into an argument with the United States government over. We know that if they want to make a nuclear weapon, it's just not just the inspectors they have to kick out. They have to develop a nuclear trigger system. There is some kind of concern over what is happening in Parchin, that site which is 30 kilometers south of Tehran. However, that they were testing some surrogate, and I emphasize the word surrogate, explosives which could potentially be used in a nuclear explosion. And that hasn't even been confirmed yet because the Iranians don't allow the IAEA to go there to check it.
I think that this whole conversation, at least some of the remarks, are framed on this premise that military action is the end-all, be-all for resolving this standoff. Every single person that you talk to who actually knows what they're talking about, who has served in the military or knows the intelligence or has served in the Pentagon or even in the Israeli military establishment, has been adamant that military action will actually make an Iranian nuclear weapon far more likely, not less likely. That if Israel takes military action, they can delay Iran's nuclear program by maybe a year. If the U.S. takes military action, we can delay the Iranian nuclear program by maybe 3 or 4 years. And in so doing, we'll actually convince Iran to kick out IAEA inspectors who are on the ground right now, who provide the assurances that Iran can't break out to a nuclear weapon without us knowing about it. And Iran would make a full sprint to actually building a bomb.